Welcome to another episode of Lilja and Lou's podcast. In this episode, we will bring you the latest news, and we have a guest with us today. We have Tyson Blue here, and he will join us in talking about Storm of the Century, written directly for TV miniseries, and so stick around for that.
Welcome, welcome. Do not fear the door that lies before you. We will protect you. We are your guides, Hans and Lou, and we will give you the latest in Stephen King news. But before we do so, you must prove yourself worthy. You must open the door and join us in the death room. Hey everybody, welcome back to the latest news installment from Lilja and Lou's podcast, and this time we've got several items for you, and Hans is going to start us off with some pictures.
Exactly. First one is another picture from our favorite movie, or favorite upcoming movie, Carrie, which shows Carrie covered in blood, and it looks like she's walking through town. It looks good.
Yep, she looks pretty crazy.
Promising. Yep, mad as hell.
Yeah, yeah.
And the second photo is actually a photo of Stephen King himself at that of Under the Dome, as they started filming a pilot. We'll move on to the entire season. It shows King with one of those director's claps.
Yeah, clapboard.
Yeah, background. I'm not sure who they are, but it looks like they are some of the actors from the set.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Yes, I think it's the leads. I think the guy on the left is the guy that's playing Dale Barbie, and I think the girl on the right, she's got the red hair. I'm pretty sure that's the girl that was signed on to play the newspaper editor. So I think those are the two big stars. King's looking pretty good in that picture.
Yeah, he's looking great.
I have to ask you, Hans, the director, Niels Arden Oplev, he's from your country, is he not?
No, he's from Denmark.
Oh, my apologies.
We're very close.
Right.
It's just over a bridge and you're there. So.
Oh, okay. Cool.
It's almost my country.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Did he direct some of the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo? Is that him, or am I mixing him up with something?
Yeah, I think he did the first movie.
Okay. Yeah.
The series of those three.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
Well, I'm looking forward to see what he does with Under the Dome then. That should be very interesting.
Yeah, me too.
Because he's very good at establishing a sense of place, which is important for this project. Okay, so next item up is we have a more fleshed out synopsis for the upcoming movie Mercy, which is based on the short story Grandma, and the synopsis reads as follows. Based on a short story by Stephen King, Mercy tells the tale of two young boys, The Walking Dead's Chandler Riggs and Super 8's Joel Courtney, who move with their mother to take care of their dying grandmother at her decrepit farmhouse. When they suspect that the elderly woman they love has encountered a dark spirit, they fear she might not be the only one who won't make it through the summer alive. And once George and Buddy McCoy arrive at their grandma Mercy's house, and there's where we get the title from the movie, Shirley Knight, who is played by Shirley Knight, what they find inside is her 150-year-old home is nothing short of terrifying, as the brothers experience deeply disturbing phenomena they believe to be the work of an ancient witch. They must fight for their lives and overcome the evil forces threatening their family. So that sounds quite a bit different than the short story. So
yeah, sure does.
Yeah, but
my guess is that they have to do it, elaborate on it, since they're making a full movie of it, not just a 20-minute short movie. Yeah,
which is fine. I mean, it's an adaptation, so don't go in expecting to get the story. Just to hope that it ends up being a good movie. Haven was an adaptation of Colorado Kid. It's treated like that. Yeah. But I'm impressed with the cast. I mean, Chandler Riggs from Friday Night Lights is in it as well. So yeah, it's a good cast. I'm looking forward to seeing what to do with it.
it has potential. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Okay, moving along into book news. It was recently released that Joyland is going to be released in the UK as well.
I'm really shocked that was even up in the air, to be honest. I just figured Stephen King books would be published pretty well in every market that he's published in with no hesitation. So
yeah, I'm not sure that actually that Colorado Kid was released in the UK. It might have been, but I'm not sure about that. Could have been that it was only released in the US.
Okay, interesting. All right, and then up next, circling back again to, we've mentioned the story before, but now there is a audio excerpt of Stephen King's recent essay that he's posted on Amazon about gun control, and you can check out the link at Hans' page and listen to the audiobook, and it was an interesting clip to listen to, right, Hans?
Yeah, it was. You can actually buy the book from audible.com now. You want to check it out, and what I found most interesting with it is that King actually discussed his reasons for pulling Rage off the shelves. So that was interesting to hear.
Yeah, he's mentioned it before, but he says it's like an accelerant for fire, so he just didn't want to have anything further with it to do on the market, so he decided to pull it.
My regrets with this one is that it should have been read by Stephen himself, since it's told in first person, and King has a special way of reading his books, so I think this would have been even better if he had done it himself.
Okay, now what's next?
And next is this week's or even month's biggest news, the release of the cover for Dr. Sleep from Scribner. And it shows a girl's face, woman's face maybe, in the background in red. And it has Stephen King and Dr. Sleep in, it's like smoke. And it kind of looks like it's coming from her mouth.
Yeah.
What was your first reaction when you saw this?
I was mixed. It didn't blow me away like previous book covers have recently, like the Went Through the Keyhole and Under the Dome. I thought those were two really good covers that really reached out and grabbed me right away. This one I'm not quite so sure about.
Yeah, I agree. When, as you say, the Under the Dome cover was released, I felt like, wow, I want this as a big poster and put it on my living room wall. But with this one, I felt, it's... my first reaction was that it actually almost looked a little bit like it was something made by a fan. I didn't get that professional cover feel from it. But the more I look at it, the more I actually like it. So I'm not totally convinced that it's a great cover yet, but I like it more now than when I first saw it.
Yeah, it's growing on me too, and I'm hoping that the smoke letters is an element from the book. If it is, then it will sway my opinion much more favorably to the book cover. But if it's not, if it doesn't relate to the book at all, I'm still going to be kind of questioning it. And as somebody else has pointed out, I don't really like the fact that Stephen King's name is given prominence over the title of the book. I think, I don't know, at this stage in his career, that's not really necessary. I think, they could put it in a bag for bread and it would still sell big. So I don't really think you need to put his name at the top. I much prefer if the title of the novel was at the top. But
yeah, I agree. If the smoke really doesn't have anything to do with the story, it's strange to put it like that.
Yeah.
On the cover. So I sure hope it has something to do with it. And I would like to see a cover where actually King's name isn't on it at all. I mean, he could definitely sell books by just the title alone. Yeah. Maybe on the spine we can have his name, but on the front, I would like to see a cover with just the title and not his name at all. I think that would be pretty cool.
Because you really want to see the face clearer too, and maybe that's part of the reason why they did it that way, because it almost looks like they're wearing a party hat or something as well. It's really hard to tell.
Yeah, and often with King's cover, it's usually some illustration that goes all the way around to the backside as well.
Yeah.
So when we get to see the entire cover, it might explain something more.
Yes. Is the UK cover out yet? Or?
No.
Okay, that would be interesting on that one.
We only have the the limited cover from Cemetery Dance has been released a while, and actually that cover is just really released. They different covers for different edition, right. And on one it looks like an old man with some red smoke almost coming out of his mouth. So that's
So maybe there's something to that smoke.
Yeah, and it's like a spray can or something with smoke coming out, shaped like a face. And the third is like some corpse or something laying around and smoke around. So I think the smoke will definitely have some meaning in the story, but it should be interesting to see. It's fascinating that I think the official trade cover, if we can call it that, the one from Shrib, has so much in common with the limited. Usually they are often quite different, so it was almost like it's done by the same designer, I think.
Yeah, it's they're not as striking as the covers for the Dark Tower, which I really like those ones quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because the artist is such a great artist. But this kind of looks more like Photoshop-y kind of stuff, which I much prefer drawings or nice graphic illustrations, hand-drawn stuff.
Yeah.
But this kind of all seems like Photoshop stuff. So, but it looks like now seeing the collector's edition set Cemetery Dance, it looks like smoke is definitely an element of the story. So maybe that represents the people's souls or something, or their energy. I don't know.
Yeah, we got a lot of comments on this cover on the Facebook page, and it's both pro and cons for the cover. Some people like it, some people don't like it. Some people like Penny Favor says, "I will remove the cover when I'm reading it anyway, so it doesn't matter when one way or another."
That's interesting. I only take the cover off if I take the book with me somewhere, but normally I leave the cover on.
Yeah.
Renato Rodriguez says it's a different vibe from The Shining. I personally don't like it. It looks like a Tim Burton movie poster.
Yeah, not so wrong. No. That's something that I would have preferred as well. I agree with him that it really doesn't feel connected to The Shining. And based on the cover, so maybe they could have done a cover, but then on the other side, there's been so many different covers for The Shining, so it's hard to pick one. But the cover doesn't really connect it to The Shining.
No.
So a lot of people say that it's awesome and they love it and like it. Most people, I think it's more people that like it than don't like it. So
I do agree with the commenters that say that it's a creepy cover. And I also agree with some of the people that it makes them feel like want to go grab a cigarette or something. And I haven't smoked for a long time, but yeah, it kind of gives me that feeling like I want to go and light one up. Which is kind of weird.
Yeah. I keep on wondering if you could remove the letters on it, if it would look better then.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know if the font size of it is, if that's the problem.
Yeah, that's like what Derek McCumber says. This is a cool image. I wouldn't mind the text if it didn't cover the whole freaking cover.
Yeah.
I agree. You kind of want the letters to pull back in a little bit so you can see the face clearer behind it. Yeah, but it's definitely generating interest, which is the aim of a cover. So. Yeah.
You can actually see parts of it on the official Stephen King site if you click on the link that says about the cover news.
Oh, okay.
They have the face of the woman, and you can see it without the text a little bit more there. You can check that out to see if I think that's more efficient.
Oh, yeah.
Looks pretty nice.
Yeah. It's more like the smoke is streaming off of her. Interesting.
Yeah.
She must be one of the trailer people, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
As I said, most people like it, except for that Stephen King's name is often bigger than the title, which we have talked about. But I think most people are happy with it from the comments. Some don't, but most like it.
Yeah, I agree with Renato. It would have been nice if they would have had some sort of tie-in to The Shining.
Yeah.
I don't know how they could have done it, but because this is a long time later, and obviously Danny's not a kid anymore, and I don't know how they could tie it in really without. Maybe they could have showed the axe through the door or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The axe is only in the movie, isn't it?
Yes, this is true. All right. Yeah. Well, boy, we talked a lot about that cover, but everybody's obviously, from the responses that you got on your Facebook thread, the interest in this book is quite high.
Yeah.
And I made a joke in one of your posts on your page that the Joyland cover is not getting nearly the same amount of exposure or reaction. And I guess in a way it's for the hard crime cover books, it really fits into their style of covers. It's very a very noir cover, very 50s, 60s dress, and even the cameras have one of those old cameras with a big pop-out light bulb. And in some ways, I wonder if this is going to be kind of like the forgotten book this year for Stephen King with everything else that's going on. Forgotten for Stephen King is relative in terms of his popularity with the media, but still.
Exactly. Yeah, it will only be number one in the bestseller list for like 3 months, so.
Yeah. Whereas Dr. Sleep will be up for a year or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see read Dr. Sleep, but I think Joyland is going to be the sleeper and the better book of the two.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a good vibe, a good feeling about Joyland. I think it would be one of those. I think the problem or the downside with Dr. Sleep is everybody will have really high expectations for this one. So if it's not a super good book, people will be disappointed, and I think people will have some, what do you call it? Will have some
unrealistic.
Some things they want to see in the book, and if that's not in it, they will be disappointed. While Joyland and on the other side, people don't know anything about that one, so it will probably make more people happy, I think.
Yeah, that's Dr. Sleep. You've hit the nail on the head. It's people have expectations about certain things and whether we're going to see them or not. Yeah, we don't even know if Danny's mother is still alive, so that will be interesting. So.
Yep, sure will.
Yeah.
It's a good year to be a Stephen King fan this year.
Absolutely.
That's definitely sure.
Yeah, and just to be a King family fan, and because as we mentioned in other podcasts, Joe Hill's book's coming out shortly, and it's getting good reviews, and Owen King's book is out shortly as well, and it's also getting good reviews. So, and I'm looking forward to reading both of those as well. So, yeah, it's going to be a banner year for King stuff.
Yeah, sure is.
And speaking of King, Hans, you've made a long-time hobby out of Stephen King, and just recently, last month, actually on Valentine's Day, I hope your wife wasn't too upset.
No.
You snuck out of the house for a couple hours, and I hope that was after you took her out for dinner and wine and whatnot. But you were was it a bookstore or is it a coffee shop?
No, it's a coffee. It's actually a museum.
Oh, okay.
In a town called Linköping, here in Sweden, and they have something called the Nerd Cafe once a month.
Oh, okay.
And that is a place where someone who is a geek or nerd in a good way about something. Since it's me I'm talking about, I want to that.
I was wondering how you got in. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so they find all these nerds who have a special interest and invite them to come and speak about their interest. For the whole event is like 2 hours, and they are invited to speak and answer questions. And they asked me if I wanted to come and talk about Stephen King. And since I am a nerd about Stephen King, I said, sure. Just send me a train ticket and I'll be there.
Oh.
So I went there and I had a speech prepared, which I now can confess that I hadn't read through in its entirety, so I didn't know exactly how long it would be. But my plan was to speak for like an hour and take questions for like half an hour if there was that many questions. So when I started speaking, and then when I was done, an hour and a half had passed.
Wow.
So I talked a little longer than I expected to. But I think the people there enjoyed it, and since it was announced like a Stephen King thing, so only the people who were there were fans of Stephen King, so it was quite easy audience to talk to. And I think most of them liked it. My only concern with it was that I spoke a little bit too long, so we have to cut the questions short, and that's actually the part that's most fun when people ask questions. So if I ever do it again, I will try to shorten it or have more time to dispose.
Okay, so and how did you find talking in front of a group of people? Is that a problem for you, or you're used to doing that, or was this your first time?
No, this was actually my first time in this forum, so I kind of liked it. And, hopefully the people there liked it, and it went pretty well, I think.
Okay.
The only problem was that it was recorded and put on their website, but there was some distraction with the sound, so
Oh, that's
it
too bad.
comes and goes, and so it's pretty unbearable to listen to, and
No, that's too
unfortunately.
bad.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, maybe you can record it again at home and put the whole thing up and do it in English so that we could hear it too. That'd be kind of cool.
yeah, that would be great.
Could make it part of your Marv's Museum.
Yeah, I might do that.
Cool.
People want to listen. Yep.
Yeah, I was, because I know I was talking to you off air, and I was saying I was stunned when I clicked on the video and saw it was 90 minutes long. I'm going, holy cow.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could talk that long. But you went through like your whole history of your website and everything too, right?
Yeah, it was started talking about Stephen from childhood up to today. And talked about my website and a Swedish website about Stephen King that I run as well. So I covered the 90 minutes pretty well.
Very good. All right. Yep. Well, I'm glad that went well for you, and hopefully at some point we'll get to see the slides and everything that you did with some narration. That would be awesome.
Yeah. I'll try to fix that.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
This is great. What's our job? We'd like drive around and pick up stiffs or what?
It's time for reviews from the night shift. And now we join Tyson Blue in the discussion of the TV miniseries Storm of the Century. So we're picking it up right now at the roundtable. We'll talk about each of the episodes. And in part one is basically the setup episode. And I thought that it was a good showcase for Colm Feore's acting chops as the mysterious Andre Laneige, which is French, of course, for snow, for those that didn't know. So what did you think of the opening act, Tyson?
I liked it. I think it did a good job of setting up who the people were, their relationships with each other, the conflicts, and the arrival of Laneige. And it also did a lot of foreshadowing, knowing this big storm is coming, and they're getting ready for that. And they've got this mysterious man coming, and these things happening. I thought it did a good job of setup without slowing down the flow of the story. Which is something I think that King does particularly well. I have a friend who's a writer whose first novel could have used a good dose of that. They would throw in things that would just, because it is possible to just bring in a narrative that's moving right along to a dead stop by not doing that well, but by doing it in the context of the dialogue and the things that are going on, you can set your story up and still keep it moving at the same time. And I think that this first episode really does that. Plus, you get a preview of Laneige's villainy pretty early on that a lot of the people in the story don't know about right away. So I thought he did a pretty good job of it.
What about you, Hans?
Yeah, I agree. And I like the way they set up that how evil he is, Laneige, because you don't really see him use any violence. I mean, he beats Martha to death with his cane, but you don't see it. It's more psychological, and he tells people he knows their darkest secret, and it's just something creepy about it that this isn't good. And I like that setup. It makes him very evil, I think.
Yes, I especially like the way he was shot. A lot of times it was in silhouette or in shadow or from really low shots down by his feet looking up at him. And it made him, all these different angles. So collectively made him a very striking presence to start off at the beginning, especially since he's all dressed in black and it's snowing and everything else is white. So I was really impressed with how they set up his character and the fact that he just lets himself, he just sort of sits in that chair after killing the woman, and he just basically lets himself be taken without putting up much of a struggle. But he does have these little flashes of power along the way that you're kind of going, this dude is just waiting for something to happen, or something. Like he's just manipulating all these people. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I liked how understated his performance is.
Yeah.
It was similar to what you touched on. For most of the time, he just sort of sits quietly and stares, doesn't say anything or really do anything, so that when he actually does explode, it's scarier when it happens because it's unexpected. You don't know when it's going to happen, and it's just sudden.
Yeah, and that after time he just sits there and he wants to be arrested. He wants to get. in the community, so or in store, that this is just a way for him to get to the inside, and that I think makes him really scary.
Right.
One thing I reacted on that might have been a little bit over the top is when he shows his fangs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know if that's necessary. It makes him more like a visual monster instead of a psychological monster, I think. So I'm not sure I like those fangs.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a big fan of them either. I don't think they really add anything to his character. I think it's enough to see like his eyes glowing red and things like that.
Yeah.
And the fact that he can jam doors, and of course the big thing is he seems to know everybody's secrets. And in this way, the episode struck me a lot like the Salem's Lot, where you have on the surface you have this peaceful, bucolic kind of little town environment, but underneath it all are all these deep, dark secrets. We know that one character was with a prostitute when his mother was dying in a old people's home. Another guy's doing illegal drug running. A girl is pregnant and thinking about getting an abortion. So it's very, in that aspect, it really reminded me a lot of Salem's Lot. And go ahead.
I agree with that. That's it was similar to Salem's Lot and even
The Mist.
other more, The Mist. The strange little New England town is a staple of Steve's work and other people's work that works really well in this.
Yeah, it's Stephen King is very good at setting up scenarios where people are trapped or unable to get out of a place, and that becomes kind of like a mini Under the Dome kind of scenario where the people are trapped and they can't get away until they come up with a desperate solution. So this echoes a lot of his other stories, but the twist with the snow, of course. Yeah, and that's why one of the reasons why we decided to do this one right now, because we just went through a big storm in the States, at least, and eastern United States and that. So
calling it the storm of the century down here, which seemed a little premature for me since we're only 13 years into it.
Yeah. So it's got a lot of the elements of his other stories that I've always really enjoyed. We've mentioned The Mist. Basically, the snow is coming in like the mist, and it's trapping the people on the island with the storm. And we've got like the undercurrents of all these secrets from Salem's Lot and Under the Dome. I enjoyed the fact that they really worked at, and I'm not from the area, so maybe to people that lived there, they thought they were really hokey, but I thought the accents for that area were pretty well done. But I don't know how it struck you guys.
Yeah, it's as I would think it would be, but as you say, I haven't really talked to anyone with that accent, so it's just my imagination is that it would be like that. So.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Tyson?
Well, they did. Well, I grew up in New England, and when I'm back home, I do talk like that, and I thought they did a good job of it. And I like that because it's authentic. I mean, it's in New England; they should talk like New Englanders.
Yeah.
But and that's the milieu Steve knows best. That's where he spent. Well, he grew up in New England, in Maine and Connecticut. So,
yeah,
it's a classic example of write what you know.
Yeah. I have two more things I want to talk about in the first episode. If there's other cast members that I don't mention, you guys feel free to step up and mention them. But of course, besides Colm Feore, who plays the lead baddie, the other character who I thought did a great performance, and he always does, is Jeffrey DeMunn. Even though in this miniseries he doesn't play a very likable character, but to say the least. But I always enjoy his performance. I thought he was fantastic. And this is Storm of the Century is kind of like where all those miniseries were coming out. I call this almost like the Wings period of Stephen King miniseries, because if it wasn't Tim Daly playing the lead in one of his miniseries, it was Mark Webber, and because both those actors were leads in the comedy series Wings, I always get kind of a chuckle when I watch one of these. So yeah, it's and the rest of the cast was good, but they were mostly character actors, and their parts weren't as big. But for me, those were the performances that stood out the most.
I agree, and I must say I like Jeffrey DeMunn as not likable character, because often he is a very likable character, I think. So it was nice to see him on the other side.
No, I think so too. Jeff he's a good actor. He's been in all of Frank Darabont's King movies. He was a not very likable character in the first one in Shawshank Redemption, although he didn't have a very large role. But he was very likable on in the Green Mile, and sort of neutral in The Mist. About all I really remember him doing is running in the door yelling, "There's something in the mist," and then went home or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, he was there in the van at the end, so.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. No,
Yeah,
but that his line kind of sets the tone for the movie, right? When he runs in and says that, something in the mist. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing. Go ahead.
A small but important role.
Excellent. Yes. The other thing I want to talk about, and you touched on this earlier, Tyson, is the budget for this miniseries. I've done a little bit of Googling on it. Was $35 million, which, back in 1999 is nothing to sneeze at. So, and they aired 3 episodes over, starting Valentine's Day back in February 1999. And it was aired in 3 parts. Each one was roughly an hour and a half. And though I'm sure with commercials, that probably was padded out to 2 hours. So they really established some of the exterior shots around Maine. I thought that was really well done. Apparently, they also filmed in San Francisco, Toronto, and / Oshawa, and Winnipeg. Yeah. I was surprised about the Winnipeg one. I guess they wanted some really authentic-looking outside snow locations, because if you grow up in the snow, it's always kind of laughable when you watch these movies that take place in the snow, because the snow never looks real. So,
I'll tell you about that snow later.
Yeah. Okay. The snow actually looked fairly good at times, but at other times it looked fake. But that's nothing new and specific to this production. But yeah, so that's a fairly impressive amount for it. And one thing I would love to see is a high def release of this, because so much of it is dependent upon shadows, and there's a lot of dark scenes, and unfortunately, the current release of it is not a very good one. It really needs to be remastered and re-released, and I think it would really help the look of the movie.
Yeah, I think so too. Because the copy I initially got was from ABC. It was on videotape. That's how they did things now.
Yeah.
But the commercial release was on DVD, which is fairly high resolution. But as far as I know, it's not available on Blu-ray yet.
No, it's not. It's something that really could use.
Some of the comments I read, people were asking if it was available on DVD or Blu-ray, and the last time I saw it was part of a box set with the Langoliers and the Tommyknockers and one other King-related miniseries, but I don't remember what the 4th one was.
Maybe Desperation or something.
Might have been.
Yeah. So this is. I would really like to see a high def transfer of this. I don't know if that'll ever happen, because as a miniseries, I don't know if this was released theatrically overseas or not, but which would be tough to do because it's so long. But yeah, it really could stand from a high def release, just because there's so many scenes that take place in shadows and that, and are not. It's pretty murky at times, and I think that diminishes the impact of some of the scenes that they were trying, some of the things they were trying to do in those scenes as well. The only other thing well, a couple of tidbits here is I loved Stephen King's cameo. He was on the TV after it was supposedly broken, and he was playing a lawyer for, and their number was 1-800-1-STICK'EM, which I thought was pretty funny. And the other tidbit is that the story takes place on Little Tall Island, which is the same setting for Dolores Claiborne. So. Right. And the other things to note I had in general was the director is Craig Baxley, and he also directed Kingdom Hospital and all the episodes, I believe, and the Rose Red miniseries as well. And the music was composed by Jerry Chan, and he also worked on Kingdom Hospital and Rose Red as well. So, and I have to say that the music works fairly well at building up mood and tension. So I really enjoyed that as well. Moving on to is anything else you guys want to say about the first episode, or?
No, I don't. I think we're.
No.
Okay.
Just a comment on whether it was released theatrically overseas.
Yeah.
Here in Sweden it was released on DVD,
Mhm.
and it was put together as one long movie.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. So moving on to the second episode, and this story is very much a 3-act play. So we have 3 episodes, and the middle one, I don't have a lot to say about it myself. It just, it's basically just ramping up the conflict, and Lineage is continuing to divide the townspeople, turn them against each other. So you kind of get like the monsters are coming out on Maple Street or whatever vibe going on here. So I'll just sort of open to you guys if you have specific comments that you want to make about it.
No, I kind of agree with your assessment. It's the middle act, so it's building up towards the climax, but it's not there yet. And then all the sub elements of the weather and people beginning to line up against each other and so forth. It's a good middle act. There's
Yeah, I agree. One thing I was thinking when I watched it, when this aired on TV in the US. How was this middle act received? Was it felt like it was a little long, maybe in the middle, not that much really happening?
Yeah, I think the general comments that I've seen about this miniseries in general is that it moves a little slow, but
yeah,
especially in today's how quickly cut movies are today. But it really has a book feel to me. So it doesn't really bother me, and because there's so many characters to get to know, you have to do that build-up so that when you get to the final episode, what is happening in there actually has some import. So, but in general, most of the comments around this series moves a little bit slowly at times. So I think that would probably be a fair assessment of the middle piece as well.
Yeah,
I think so. I agree with what you said about having a book feel to it,
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of time, a lot of miniseries and a lot of King's miniseries build slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, you'd mentioned Kingdom Hospital. One complaint I've heard from other people is that moved slowly, or that or series like Lost that feed you information a little bit at a time and they build up. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It doesn't bother me. I like a series that's basically limited and that builds up as you go along. It doesn't give you all the information right away because it kind of means you have to pay attention to it and
Mm-hmm.
and keep up with what's going on. And if you like your situation set up and run through and resolved in a half an hour, then that's what sitcoms are for.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so then we get to the third act, and Calm Fear's character has at this point got everybody's attention, to say the least. And I really like the move from he's been like a puppet master, and he's got everybody manipulated now and in positions and situations where he wants them to be. So I like his step forward. His presence really becomes quite mesmerizing, and he's got the whole town's attention by this point, to say the least. And I just think that it's a pretty masterful performance.
Yeah, I agree. And I like when they are in the town hall and the meetings, and they try to decide what to do, and everybody's upset, and especially Mike Anderson, who is the only one who think they should stand up to Linoche.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, I can't imagine what I would do myself in a situation like that.
Right.
And I think that really comes through to that the frustration that especially Mike feels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really good performance by Tim Daly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's where the real tension in the story begins to really ramp up as it heads towards its climax. With everybody, with the good of the many be outweighing the good of the few, so to speak, to venture into Star Trek territory a little bit.
Yeah.
And it sets up an interesting question. What would you do? What is the right thing to do in a situation like this?
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that Tim Daly's character is really the only one that's doing the right thing, and he ends up kind of like Job, in the biblical tale, he's the one that ends up being punished.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I really like that we get.
Yeah. It's
we
a Steve
get,
King story, so no good deed goes unpunished.
That's
True.
very true.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I like the fact that we get to see the prologue of what happens afterwards. It's not just that he flies away with the kid, but we get to move ahead a couple of years and see what's happened to everybody, and especially Mike Anderson, and when he sees his son in the streets of San Francisco years later. And I like that we get to hang along a little bit longer than usually in these kind of movies.
Yeah, I think the ending, or once it's revealed that Laneige is there for one of the children to basically to take one of the child to become his heir, I guess you could say, it's a lot of build up to a very difficult question. It's kind of like that, the King Solomon or King David, where the two mothers claim that the son is theirs, and he says that he'll cut it in half if they can't come to an agreement. So it's kind of got that dynamic going, and the fact that it's the mother that betrays her child, that's a pretty bold story turn, especially for something on TV, and it's not a happy ending. So I think that's where a lot of the power comes from this miniseries, is that slow build-up, and then the fact that the hero doesn't save the day. So that's a very interesting resolution to the story.
Yeah, and I personally love the fact that it's not a happy ending.
Yeah, kind of figured you would.
Yeah,
you're a dark person, Hans.
Yeah, I am.
But that part of that is what Steve talks about sometimes in his essays and everything. It's avoiding what he calls the curse of expectation, where what you expect to happen does happen, and instead of coming up with some ingenious way to outwit Linoge at the end, he basically does get what he wants and go away, but which probably happens more often than not in real life, but not very often in drama. And so when you see it in a strange way, it's refreshing and unsettling at the same time, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I personally, it didn't come as a surprise. It was Mike's kid who was the one that Linoge finally took.
Yeah. That was set up at the beginning. So.
Yeah, and as Molly says, when it's apparent that it's her kid that he's going to take, she accused him of having it rigged. Mm-hmm. But we didn't hear more about that. Do you think it was rigged? Do you think that was some statement that was just left up to the viewers, or? I
kind of tend to think that it was rigged. But
yeah,
because I think Laneige knew who he wanted right from the start.
He just wanted to have some fun with them before.
Well, he might have some sort of limitation where he can't take it, where they have to offer it up to him. That's kind of like, that's always a more powerful way to drive a story, is make the victim surrender it rather than take it from them by force. Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I didn't like about it was the scenes where Linoge has the kids and he's flying around with them.
Yeah.
I didn't like the flying. I think it could have been done in another way. I mean, the meaning was that he had them and he could hurt them.
Yeah.
But I didn't really like the Superman flying around thing.
Yeah, that's the sequence that gets the most criticism, and it's the part that doesn't hold up too well today.
Yeah.
Those kind of visual effects are always kind of dicey, and it does kind of kill the tension a little bit, because you kind of like have to really bend backwards to go with that sequence. I agree.
Yeah.
And that's too bad, because really that's the only weak special effects sequence in the whole movie. Everything else is pretty well done, especially there's a lot of miniature work done with the boats and the docks being smashed. And all that's really realistically and well done. So to have it fall down on that one shot it's too bad. I wish they had a visualize a different way of doing it as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so any last
Well,
thoughts before we turn it over to Tyson?
I would say this, that I think this is definitely one of the better miniseries done from Stephen King.
Yeah.
And definitely the one of the most that still is enjoyable to watch after 14 years. Many of the others are, even if the story is good, and I mean the way they made movies 14 years ago or even further, it changes, and special effects are look kind of cheesy today that they did 20 years ago. So I think this one has survived well, both story-wise and technically. So.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, the dating can, especially some of the early King movies are, you know, they were horror movies, so they were traditionally done on a low budget just, you know, to begin with, and as a result they look kind of dated today because for all the I've stirred up a couple of controversies in different places talking about this with people who's, how dare they remake Carrie? There, you mentioned Carrie in this podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyson.
How dare they remake it? Sissy Spacek was perfect. And I said, yeah, but, you know, as bad as it was, even the TV remake a few years ago had Patricia Clarkson's really understated take on Carrie's mother, which was kind of cool. And if you look at, you know, the whole John Travolta and the hairstyles and the big cheesy tuxedos and everything, it's really 70s, and yet, you know, bullying in school is still a major thing. So I'm looking forward to this remake. Actually,
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think it's more timely today than now. Bullying is a bigger problem, and with the internet and so forth, and the original movie really skimped over the whole destruction through the town sequence as well. So
yeah.
And we should be able to get that.
Which even the TV movie dealt with to some extent, although I didn't watch it when it was actually broadcast on NBC. I saw it on a screener that the network sent, and it was, all of that stuff was still in transition, so it almost looked like claymation animation that they put in to show what they were going to be doing later.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
The only criticisms I have of that were the obvious series sequel hook that they stuck in at the end, and the fact that Carrie was way too pretty to be Carrie. But I thought Patricia Clarkson as her mother was fantastic. But a lot of things that were done in the 70s or even in the 80s look kind of dated when you look at them now. It's and the part of what Lou touched on, you know, this is on an island in a town. It's kind of isolated. It's up in the middle of nowhere and off the coast of Maine. It's the kind of thing that does, because of that, it's kind of timeless. And I think that helps it stand up. And it's a very basic standard storyline that King's revisited 2 or 3 times in different ways. In The Mist, the whole sacrificial lamb idea takes place in The Mist, and 1 or 2 other stories by him. So it's obviously it's a deep well to go to, because King and other people have gone to it, and those are one of the things that make it hold up a little better than some of them do.
Yeah, it's funny. On the one hand, I think Storm of the Century works better as a TV miniseries because we never had the book to read, but I also feel, on the other hand, because we didn't have the book to read, it's not a miniseries that sticks with you until you watch it again. Like I haven't watched it in a long time, and I've forgotten how good it actually was. But because for me, I think my favorite miniseries, even though it's dated, is The Stand. I still think that one, story-wide, holds up pretty good, but it is very dated.
The Stand does hold up again, and that's basically, you know, the whole world is destroyed and everybody's back to zero almost, and that helps it hold up, along with the fact that it's just a great story.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And the other one that doesn't hold up at all for me is It. I mean, Tim Curry's pretty good as the clown, but the rest of the stuff doesn't really work for me at all. That's a miniseries that's really, really, really become dated for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Alrighty, so those are our thoughts on Storm of the Century, and at the time of its filming, Tyson was fortunate enough to, or he was sneaky enough, I don't know which way it went, but he got himself on the set. And why don't you tell us a bit about that, your set visit? in my
Oh,
hometown of Oshawa, Ontario,
I
Canada.
remember that's the last time we spoke. I was at that time I was doing my regular column for Cemetery Dance, and so that I had I had a lot of cooperation from King's office and a lot of contacts with publishers and TV people, and was able to arrange to do a quick set visit, Storm of the Century. It was in the spring, maybe early summer. I remember it was warm. So my oldest son took off school and went along with me, and we made our way around Lake Ontario to Oshawa. They had to tell us how to get there. It's the studio. There's actually a studio there. It was an old sugar beet warehouse. It looks kind of like the traditional children's book renditions of Noah's Ark. This big brown round vaguely boat-shaped building. It's upside down. Actually, if you're on the Gardner Expressway runs through Toronto, and then it turns into something else when it comes out the other side and runs along the lake shore. I don't remember the number of it because since they put the 407 through, I used that to get to Peterborough going up there.
Highway 2.
But that's the way we used to go. But actually, if you do that and you're going through Oshawa, you can see the top of this building from the expressway even nowadays.
Oh yeah, off the 401.
Yeah. That's it. It is the 401. And so we went up, we got there, and basically there wasn't a whole lot there to tell you that you were on a movie set or a miniseries set. There were a few RVs parked around the building. There was all the power lines and cables running in and out, but you just sort of parked your car. There was security to keep people from coming on, but you just drive around. It's in kind of an industrial park area, and you really wouldn't know that there was a movie being shot. A few of the actors were taking 10 in chairs outside. Jeff DeMunn was sitting there reading a paperback and catching a few rays between takes, and I got to chat with him a little bit, not knowing that a few months later I'd be working with him on a fairly regular basis when the Green Mile started shooting. The day that we were there, they were mainly shooting. There's a scene in a snowstorm in the town where people on a snowmobile run into some of the other townspeople, and they're sort of shouting back and forth, trying to be heard over the wind. And it's a very short scene, but of course it took most of the time we were there to shoot. And it was interesting. They had built a part of the main street of the town inside this old warehouse so that they could have a controlled nighttime environment, and they could make it snow or rain or whatever they needed it to do at that particular time. And of course, this being Storm of the Century and being a winter storm was snow. And it would be very quiet and nothing going on until they started to shoot, and then they'd start all these fans up and start emptying bags of fake snow, and it would blow all over the place, and the actors would do their lines. I'm pretty sure most of this had to be looped in later, but the one thing I remember is that the snow was actually made up of plastic shopping bags like you get in a grocery store that had been just mulched and were mixed in with little tiny pellets of styrofoam, round white styrofoam. And I know that because I was, for years actually, I was picking bits and pieces of this stuff out of the pockets of the clothes I was wearing, out of the cuffs, my pants. It just seems like it breeds in those places. Or so there was just tons of it down there. I've got little bags of it. So, Storm of the Century snow, whatever the day was that I was up there.
Put them up on eBay.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, and then to watch it later and see how well they integrated the buildings that they'd reproduced in there, along with the real shots that they made out on the road. I didn't really get to do many interviews. A lot of the principals weren't there because they weren't shooting the scene. They weren't involved in the scene they were shooting that day. Jeff DeMunn was probably the best known person I ran into, but it was interesting to see from a special effects standpoint to see how they made the snow and how they were able to create a blizzard at will and manipulate what would normally be uncontrollable weather. It was an interesting day trip. It was on a lot smaller scale than the Green Mile project was, but it was an interesting setup. Oddly enough, that story had just been published in Cemetery Dance at about the time I was contacted by Castle Rock about doing the Green Mile project, and the way they did that was I was sitting in my day job and the phone rang, and Frank Darabont's assistant called Dave Johnson and wanted to know if I had anything I'd written that I could send to Frank. And I did The Unseen King, and I just did this set visit to the set of Storm of the Century. So I could send those pieces along if you're interested. Actually, at that point, I don't think the Storm of the Century piece had been published yet. So, as I recall, I sent them a copy of it in manuscript, and then asked them what they wanted it for. But that's a story we can take up at another time. Another interesting thing about Storm of the Century that I wasn't directly involved in was, you may remember, after the storm is over, everything's kind of settling down. There's an establishing shot of people on the dock repairing the storm damage and kind of hosing down the docks and things like that. My parents used to, after my father retired, they would used to spend all their summers in Bar Harbor. They'd go up there as soon as the ice went out, and then they'd stay there until the people chased them out in October. And my father got to know a lobsterman named Gary Parsons, who ran a lobster fishery in Bar Harbor, and he, there's a postcard that's still around. Gary Parsons is dead now, but the postcard is still available. He was like the typical Maine lobsterman, the kind of reddish flushed face and the bib overalls and the rain slicker and stuff. And he's actually the man you see in that establishing shot hosing the dock down. And he was friends with my father, and my father would go out on his boat with him and help him out, and they'd pay him in lobster. And they'd eat lobster drenched in butter every day. So the surprise was not so much that my parents eventually got their arteries clog up and dropped dead from arterial buildup, but that it didn't happen sooner because they ate lobster day after day after day. But at any rate, Gary Parsons is the man who is hosing down the dock at the end of the Storm of the Century, and he was also the person who helped arrange for the use of lobster boats that they used for the few scenes that they appeared in when they were doing some of their establishing shots. So that's another little tidbit that I can throw in there for our listeners.
You didn't get to do a cameo while you were there?
No, that was later. It would have been a little harder to do in that, because I suppose it could have been townsperson number 75 or something, but with an isolated community in a narrow kind of trapped setting like the town or like the grocery store in the mist or something like that, it was a little harder to fit that in. And I wasn't as comfortable or established. I was just somebody writing for a magazine visiting for the day. It was a little less, it seemed more presumptuous to make a request like that for Storm of the Century than it did for the Green Mile, because by that time I'd been working on the set and knew everybody, and it was hey, that sounds like fun, can I do that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, did you actually get to go on the set yourself and walk the street or at all?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes, because between setups, you could move around. It was just once they got ready to shoot, then everybody had to kind of settle where they were. you never hear it in movies about the movies, but the first thing you hear on a set is everybody settle. It says they're getting ready to shoot, and it basically means wherever you are, stay there until the director yells cut, because if you make any noise, they'll kill you.
Yeah. And so the portion of the set that they built, was that kind of like the outside of the store or sheriff's office area, or was it just?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That must have been cool.
They basically had a little stretch of town just built inside this warehouse. It was very impressive, and everything had been aged just right. There was a shed in one place, and it had the usual rusty cans of stuff on the shelves and everything. But if you took a good look at them, you saw that they weren't brands you were familiar with. They were like movie brands, but.
Okay, I thought you were going to say they were Canadian.
I don't think so.
No, probably not.
Some of them may have been, but they really just looked made up from the prop department.
Okay. Alrighty. So, is there anything else that you can remember that you want to tell us about your set visit, or?
Not a whole lot. It was a fairly short one. It was just it was a day trip, and Toronto traffic. By the time we actually got there, that consumed quite a bit of the morning. So
yeah,
spent about maybe 2 or 3 hours, and then had to be on my way so I could ride the crest of the outgoing traffic.
Yeah.
Don't time it right, as I'm sure you know. You can be crawling until you get to Hamilton at least.
Yeah. That stretch is busier than the LA freeways during rush hour. Yeah, it's too bad I missed that, because I lived in that area. I actually grew up in Oshawa. I moved a bit further north later on, but I don't. But see, information doesn't get out as quickly back in those days. Like you mentioned, sending out your story in manuscript form. Like you kind of now that's all email or electronics. But yeah, by the time I heard about it. It had already come and gone, so that was too bad.
So it was a fairly, that was the other thing. It was a pretty quick shoot.
Yeah. TV productions tend to be, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was this your first set visit to a King movie?
Was
no.
It after?
First one was Maximum Overdrive.
Right.
Yeah.
In 1985. On Steve's birthday, as a matter of fact.
Ah.
Whatever birthday that was.
Alrighty, so we did get some feedback from our listeners. Just going through the Facebook postings here. Do you want to take the first one, Hans, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can take it.
Okay.
The first there are some questions about snow, and people love the miniseries. But the first real question is from Bryant Burnett. I guess the biggest question I would have is where you guys all stand on the issue of Linoche actually being Randall Flagg. Do you think he is, or do you think he's just a similar type of being? What do you think, Tyson?
I don't know. Most of at least the ones we know about in King's work, most of Randall Flagg's incarnations have the initials RF, but that's not entirely true. It's a possibility, because the two, as they've been portrayed in the books and in the various miniseries where Flagg has figured, have some similarities, but there's nothing that definitely comes out and says, yeah, this is Flagg. But it's an interesting question. Could be, or maybe they're distant cousins or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he is. I think he's just some sort of a demon, or some sort of supernatural being. Because his agenda is very small. He just wants a boy to take his place, whereas Randall Flagg wants to see the world burn. Like, he's much more for total destruction of everything. So I don't think that they're the same character myself.
And Flagg just sort of keeps going and going. When things get tough, he disappears and shows up again in a slightly different form somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I don't think they are the same either, and I think one of the reasons is that I think Flagg is I think he has too high thoughts about himself, that he would never take someone to replace him. I think he believes he will be there forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I want to say thanks again to Bryant for sending in that question. Bryant, if you remember, was on our last podcast. He did an audio question, which was awesome, and we're hoping to get more of those. Please, check out the widget on site. That's what it's there for. It makes it as easy as possible for you to get your voice on the podcast, and who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
We have a comment from Rochelle, RoboShow Foot. She's basically, her basic comment is it's one of the best movies she's ever seen, and she's been trying to find it on DVD, and she hasn't had any luck. And Rochelle, if you come to the thread, Arthur Martins replies a couple of posts below you, and it is available for purchase on Amazon. And I'm sure if you go to eBay or other online places of that type, you will be able to find it because it has been out on DVD for a while. My only qualm with DVD is I don't think the quality of the current release is that great. It's kind of like if you've ever had a pan and scan version of Cujo, just terrible. But once they put it on Blu-ray, I don't think it looked that good in the theaters when I saw it. So this is a presentation that really would benefit from a high-def transfer because there's so much of it that takes place in the dark and the shadows.
Yeah.
It's available. I've seen, or it was originally released as a standalone DVD, and then later it showed up in this box set that I described with Rose Red and the Tommy Knockers and a couple of the first episode of the Dead Zone for some reason, and Rose Red, I believe. So it is out there.
Yep.
So hopefully she can find a copy of it, and hopefully they'll put it out on Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Jill. One of my all-time favorites, Stephen King, is amazing. My question is, why did poor Martha Claredon have to die so violently? Couldn't Lenore have gone to an abandoned place? Well, I think the whole point is that to show how evil he is, and I don't think that would have worked if he just wouldn't have broken into an abandoned place and sat in a chair. So I think he has to show that he is a vicious man.
Yeah, it emotionally unsettles the residents because somebody stealing something would probably be a big ticket news item there. So for somebody to come on the island and kill a defenseless old woman who's well loved by everyone, that really strikes at the heart and core of that small town environment where everybody knows everybody. So he was, and whatever dark desires, fears that they had, this was the catalyst that he used to ignite those elements in everybody that lived there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree with that. It's part of King's storytelling. It tells you everything you really need to know about his villain without having to stop and say, this is a really bad guy. It's just, it kind of goes without saying.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, Tyson. It's always better to show than to tell. Like they could all say that, ooh, he looks like a bad dude. But if he actually goes and kills an old lady, a defensive lady, they're showing that he is a bad dude, a very bad dude. So that's an excellent point. It's something that the better storytellers usually do, like Stephen King. It's also why his books are so long, because showing takes a lot more to write than it does if you just tell. So you kind of have to pick your spots. If it's something important like establishing how bad your villain is, it's always, if you can do it, it's always a great idea to show. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I should bring up that because we've talked about this being an original made for TV miniseries and it's not based on a novel. However, the screenplay or the teleplay was released in paperback. I'm not sure if it's still in print or not, but it did come out in book form after the fact. So that's available for people who might want to track it down and read it.
Yeah.
And I confess I've never read that version of it. That would be interesting because it is in screenplay format too, right? It's not a
it's in screenplay format. I don't recall off the top of my head whether it's illustrated with photos from the series or not.
Mm-hmm.
I know it does have the art that they designed for it as cover art, and it was released as a paperback original. There's never been a hardcover edition of it.
Right. But
it did come out, and it should be attainable by people who are interested in tracking it down. And there aren't that many of King's screenplays out there. Silver Bullet is another one. And I've read a lot of them, but there's only a handful of them that are commercially available that anyone can go out there and pick up. So it's interesting from that standpoint too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have it in front of me, and it has photos from the miniseries in it.
Mm. And it has like stage directions, and every line it says which character is speaking and things like that.
Yeah.
Yep. So that it's not the most ideal way to read a story. Screenplays kind of take you out of the story because it's very geared towards how they're going to film the story as opposed to telling the story. So that's something to bear in mind.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting after you have seen the movie that you get some more added info that you might have missed when you watched it. So it's a good compliment.
Yeah, have you read the whole screenplay?
I have, but it's many years ago. I read it.
I just wondering if you remembered if there was any big differences between the screenplay and the finished product.
And not that I can remember right now. No, sorry.
Okay.
I don't remember any either. It's interesting. Steve is not as directorial a screenwriter as some people are, so it's less jarring to read it, other than it's kind of like reading a dramatic play. Mm-hmm. Harlan Ellison was telling me one time that like he likes reading screenplays, as do I, and somebody told him one time, well, I don't like to read screenplays because I don't know how to read them. He says, very simple. You just start up at the upper left-hand corner, you read across the line, and you repeat that until you get to the end.
Good old Harlan. Yeah. Alrighty. We have one more from Robin Stulik, and she says, the ending creeped me out when the boy smiles at the dad. Great movie for a sequel about the boy being trained to take over. What do you guys think about that? A sequel to Storm of the Century? Do we want to see how the little boy becomes the big boy?
Well, it would be interesting to see a little bit more about who Linoge is and what his purpose is. I mean, here we just find out that he wants to have someone who can replace him when he's old, but we don't really know what his mission is. So that would be interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if he wanted to do it, I'd be interested in seeing. On the other hand, I'd really rather see what happened to Charlie McGee after she left the New York Times and Firestarter.
Yeah.
And
well, at least we're going to find out what happened to Danny Torrance this year. But yeah.
Maybe she ended up marrying him in Dr. Sleep.
Yeah. Can you imagine the kids they have?
Yeah.
I always thought that King had a golden opportunity, no pun intended, to actually do that with Golden Years, because at the end of that, on the television version, not the video version that's currently available, the main characters were going to rescue Harlan, who had been kidnapped by the shop, and I thought it would have been interesting for them to go underground and meet Charlie McGee, who was living somewhere and would be the perfect person to help them break somebody to the ground when she was 5 years old.
Yeah.
So
that's a great question, Robin. It sounds like in general, we would be open to it.
Owned Golden Years, so from a rights standpoint, it was difficult to do cinematically, although there was a rumor floating around that turned out not to be true, that he was writing a novel sequel to Golden Years to finish it out the way he envisioned it, but that's never happened. But who knows? He's going back to the well on a lot of old ideas lately, and maybe it'll happen.
Yeah. Me and Hans would both like to see an ending to that.
Yeah, maybe a second season many years after.
Yeah, because he would be really young by now, probably.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that at the time was that given the length of time that had passed, Drew Barrymore still could have played Charlie McGee because she was old enough to play her as an adult by the time Golden Years aired.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true enough, true enough. So that brings us to the end of our segment on Storm of the Century. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend that you do. It, as we've mentioned several times, as an original miniseries made for TV, it's really well done, and it's got a timeless quality about it that doesn't make it feel dated if you want to go back and check it out. So we definitely recommend that you check out Storm of the Century. And I want to thank Tyson for sharing his set visit story with us.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure.
And Hans, thank you for your sharing of your screenplay.
Yeah. My pleasure. March 19 this year, Scribner is releasing Owen King's new book called Double Feature. And you have read it, Tyson. What's your thoughts about it?
It's a very impressive debut novel. This is Owen King's third book. The first one was a novella and short story collection called We're All in This Together. And he was a co-editor on a book called Who Can Save Us Now? Brand New Superheroes and Their Amazing Short Stories, which was a really good collection of superhero stories with brand new superheroes who had their own unique, sometimes head-scratchingly worthless powers, done by a number of writers. He had a story in there as well. But Double Feature is his first novel. It's the story of a filmmaker named Sam Dolan, and it takes place in disjointed time across several years. His father is a famous B movie actor who's very flamboyant and over the top and stars in trashy B movies, and generally that causes him to have sort of a tempestuous relationship with Sam, and his mother, who was, in his eyes, is a little forgiving of his father's faults, and basically they all move through the story of the novel, which deals a lot of time with a movie, with a short, or not a short film, but a feature that he made while he was in college, which goes disastrously wrong in ways I'll leave the readers to find out for themselves, and results in him going into things like wedding photography and being unable to get into a regular relationship with virtually anybody. And all of this is done through the metaphor of the movies. There's a lot of movie trivia thrown into it. It's divided into sections as if you were at a double feature movie, and it's about what we want to do, what we can do, letting go of the things you want to do that aren't going to happen, all those kinds of things. It's a pretty impressive debut novel. So I'm
in general, how is this a story that makes you laugh or cry or a bit of both, or both? More
laughter than crying.
Oh, that's cool.
It's not overtly sad.
Okay.
There are, especially some of his. At times it almost feels surreal. There is a movie theater in the small town upstate New York where a lot of the action is set, that goes through a variety of different identities as the novel progresses. Okay. And it starts out as a movie theater when everybody's very young, but then it closes down and it becomes a coffee house that caters to student revolutionaries, and then turns into, it just metamorphoses through the course of the novel. And that's always kind of interesting. And the failed first movie that Sam makes comes back again and again. And it transforms into something he never intended it to be, that ironically enough, gains fame on its own, but doesn't really do anything for him. Think Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Okay.
He'll be in the ballpark.
All right. So what about Mr. Owen King as a writer? Do you get a Stephen King vibe there, or?
Well, not really, because the subject matter is different. He writes more about ordinary people. He does have the same gift for showing you who they are by what they do and what happens with them and how they interact with other people, rather than telling you. So there's that, and certainly growing up in a family where it seems virtually everybody is a writer is kind of invaluable for if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and
he certainly seems to have made a great start of it.
So he has his own voice, I guess you could say.
Yes, more so than Joe Hill does. I mean, Joe Hill is more of a genre writer, and he's out there. But then when he and his father collaborate on something, it's not like I would say it's not like the King and Straub books, but those go back and forth to the point that they become so homogenized it's hard to tell who wrote what. But it's hard to tell in the Joe Hill Stephen King collaborations who wrote what as well. So
yeah,
he seems to be Owen seems to be wanting to kind of make it on his own merits, and so far he's done a good job of it.
right. And he's been pretty upfront in saying that he does not consider himself a horror writer, and he probably won't write horror. Or am I misremembering that?
Well, I think at least the first part is right. I don't know if he's closed the door on ever writing it, because I think there is at least one supernaturally tinged short story in his first book. There's one that involves like snakes and voodoo and so forth. I don't remember the name of it offhand. It's been 3 or 4 years since I read it, but for the most part, so far he's made his mark as a non-genre writer, I guess you'd say.
Do you think he will hear a lot about him making it because he's Stephen King's son?
It's not being played up in the publicity for the book. Steve's not even mentioned, so it seems as though they're rather than trying to hitch his star to Stephen King's coattails, they're sort of avoiding it in much the same way that Joe Hill's taken the extra step of using a pseudonym that doesn't tell you if you don't know who he is.
Yeah,
so.
It must be hard. I mean, the expectations, but with having a father that's so successful, must be hard to live up to.
And it's a theme that sort of runs in the novel as a subtext, but I'm not going to speculate on that, or how much of that comes from life experience, and how much of it is just his work as a novelist.
Okay. How long is the book?
It is, and I'm referring to a galley, although finished books are done, but I don't have one in front of me. The galley is 419 pages long.
Okay, so it's a decent sized book.
So
yeah.
It's long enough to be substantive, but on the other hand, it's not big enough that you have to wear a wrist brace while you're reading it, like The Stand or 2263
Alrighty.
or something. Not that I dislike those long books.
No. So, Mr. Tyson Blue, do you give the book a thumbs up?
Yes.
All right.
You should seek it out and give it a try. I don't think readers will be disappointed unless they go in looking for a scary story. They're not going to get that, but they will get a good read.
Cool.
From yet another writing member of the King family.
All right. Well, that's our sneak peek at the upcoming Owen King book double feature coming out from Scribner this March 19th. And Tyson, we want to thank you very much for coming on the podcast and talking to us about Storm of the Century and Owen King's new book.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I'm always willing to come on to talk about anything, especially Maximum Overdrive or The Green Mile. I think I could contribute a lot to.
Okay. Maybe you can wrangle a set visit Under the Dome. Hans posted up a link. They're looking for extras, so...
I saw that.
Yeah.
So I might be able to get a cameo.
That's right.
I could be out there at the dome and walk up to it. My face could get all smashed up against the side of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you could be the guy with the pacemaker. You could be the guy with the pacemaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should do that and give us a set report.
Almost be in character at my age. But I think they're shooting that in Wilmington, North Carolina, where the old De Laurentiis studio used to be.
Yep. They shot Firestarter
and Maximum Overdrive and Cat's Eye and Silver Bullet too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a haul for me, but actually I'm kind of going to be almost there now that you bring it up. It might be worth going a little extra.
We put a bee under his bonnet. All right.
Yep.
So we were planning on being in Southern Virginia in April. It's not that much farther because Wilmington is out. It's near Cape Fear. It's not that far away. We'll have to look into that.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing from
you.
I have to say that my excitement for that series went up quite a bit when I found out that Breaking Bad's Dean Norris got cast to be played Big Jim Rennie. I think that's an awesome choice.
He wasn't somebody I would have picked to do it. I envisioned somebody with more hair, but again, like you, I can see him in the role, and I'm sure it'll be really good.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. So there you go, folks. That's another Lilja and Lou podcast in the can, and I hope you all enjoyed that discussion that we did with Tyson Blue on the Storm of the Century. And once again, I want to thank Tyson for taking the time to visit with us and share his memories of his on-set visit with us. And in our next podcast, we're going to pull out one of the King crown jewels. And for me, it's my all-time favorite movie. And we're going to be talking about Shawshank Redemption and comparing it to the novella Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. So we hope to get some fan interaction on that. So keep an eye out on Lilja's Facebook page for that. He'll be posting a request for responses, and please remember to use that audio widget. It's very easy to use, and it'll be great to have some audio questions again. And until then,
Stay safe, but stay scared.